Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a psychological horror film, The Whole Truth. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The film begins with the mother, Mai, talking about the school with her troublesome son, Put, while her daughter, Pim, listens to them and draws butterflies on her brother's sketchbook. On the way to their school, Mai informs her children that they will celebrate later because she has been promoted to head of international affairs in their company. Her children cheer in delight, so Mai tells them to look for any place they want, which they quickly do. Mai celebrates her achievement first in her workplace, and everyone wholeheartedly congratulates her. However, her good day quickly gets ruined when her boss gives her tons of work and meetings to attend to. As she's newly promoted, Mai has to accept it. Later that day, Pim comes home and finds her brother playing video games with his classmate, Fame. Pim ignores him and goes to her room, but Fame sneaks on her while she's changing. Pim quickly notices him through the mirror, so she pushes the door to close, but Fame will not budge, so she repeatedly calls Put. However, he fails to go out because of his injury, and as he endures the pain, Fame tells Pim that he has a secret that concerns her. This catches her attention, so she slightly opens the door and asks what it is. But before he can tell her, Pim repeatedly slams the door, injuring Fame's foot. Fame curses in pain and threatens Put that he will leak the clip if he fails to fulfill his promise and storms out there. Later that day, Pim calls her mother as she and Put have been waiting for hours. Mai apologizes and explains that something urgent has come up. Hours later, while driving in the rain to get home, Mai checks her phone and finds missed calls from Pim. She closes it and focuses on the road, but she ends up in a car crash after failing to maneuver her car. Meanwhile, Pim wakes up to the constant knocking on their side door. She cautiously opens it and finds an old man standing outside. The old man introduces himself as their grandfather and informs them that their mother is in the ICU. Grandpa takes them to the hospital, and Pim immediately cries after seeing her mother is in a coma. Just then, their grandmother comes in and hugs them. Grandpa invites them to stay in their house for a while, so that their mother doesn't have to be worried. Grandma adds that they used to live there as a child, but Pim doesn't remember it, and her mother never mentioned it to them. Grandpa dismisses that and drives them to their house, where they stay in Mai's old room. The siblings settle in, and Pim wanders for a while before sleeping. The following day, Grandma cooks them breakfast the same way Mai always does, and even makes a glass of milk for Put. Grandma doesn't usually have breakfast, so she talks to the neighbors. Before they eat, Grandpa informs them that Grandma has dementia, so he needs their understanding and helps to ensure she takes her medicine on time. Later that day, they visit Mai, and the doctor informs them that there's only 50% of her waking up. They are uncertain of how long she's going to be in a coma, and they can only monitor her condition to avoid complications and infections. After taking some stuff and their cat from their home, the siblings return to their grandparents' house. Put comes in first, and he can't help but notice the hole in the wall. He peeks inside and finds a dark place. He watches as the door under the staircase opens slowly, revealing a ghost inside. Put quickly removes his eye from the hole just before his sister comes in. Put points out the hole to her, but he doesn't tell her what he saw. Later that night, Put gets into an argument with their grandparents after letting their house cat outside. Pim stops the tension and asks Grandpa to call the repairman to fix the hole in the wall. Grandpa is unaware of this, so Pim shows it to him and says that the neighbors next door might be doing some rebuilding. However, Grandpa doesn't see it, so he calls Grandma, asking if she sees a hole. She checks the wall, and she also doesn't see anything. This prompts their grandparents to suspect them of lying, but the siblings know they're telling the truth. While in their beds, Put shares his concern about the real identities of their grandparents because their mother never mentioned them. The following day, the cat still has not returned, and the hole in the wall has mysteriously disappeared. Grandma makes them breakfast as usual and gives Put a glass of milk. Put tells her that he doesn't like milk, but Grandma insists he drinks it since it's good for his bones. Later that day, Fame asks Put when he can come over again because he wants to see Pim one. Put informs him that they're staying at their grandparents and he's not allowed to come over. As expected, Fame threatens to leak the clip, but before he can hurt Put, Pim appears and stops him. Fame acts like an innocent and explains that he's just coming over after school. After her class, Pim visits her mother and talks to her, even though she's unresponsive. She shares her worries about Put's toxic friendship with Fame. Pim bursts into tears as she shares how terribly suffocating it is to live with their grandparents, and she can't wait to return to their house. Meanwhile, Fame comes over despite the siblings' disapproval of his presence in the house. While Fame threatens to show the clip to the school, Put hears strange noises. Fame cannot hear them, but Put follows where they come from, leading to the hole. Put asks Fame if he can see the hole, but Fame cannot see it. He peeks inside, only to find a little girl with a disfigured face and blood coming out of her nose and mouth. Putt quickly removes his eye and tells Fame to take a look because he will not believe him. Putt directs him to the hole, and although he can't see it, Fame peeks into the hole. Just then, something unseen smashes his head to the wall, breaking his nose. Fame curses at Putt, believing that he shoved him, but Putt denies it. He puts his fist in the air, but before he can land it on Putt's face, Pin arrives to stop him. Putt explains to her that Fame peeked through the hole, but Fame angrily denies it as he didn't see any hole. Pissed off, Fame takes his bag, threatens them their lives are over, especially Pim, and then angrily storms out. Pim asks Putt what Fame's talking about, so Putt has no choice but to confess. It turns out Fame secretly took a video clip of her taking a shower in the gym. Fame threatened to leak the video clip to the school if he didn't help him get a date with Pim. This worries Pim because Fame was hurt and might leak the video, but Putt insists he won't do it. While they're cleaning Fame's blood on the floor, Grandma suddenly comes home. This triggers her dementia, and she starts to panic and calls Pim her daughter and Putt her son-in-law. The siblings repeatedly talk to her until she calms down. She embraces Pim and repeatedly apologizes before telling them that it's time for her medicine. Pim looks behind her and finds the wall clock mark left on the wall, confusing her as the clock was removed long ago. Later that night, loud screams wake up the siblings and Grandpa, so they go downstairs to where it was coming from, and they find Grandma. She's screaming out of pain, her dementia messing with her rationality again. The following day, Grandma is back to her sane self, and she has no recollection of what she did. The siblings act along not to upset her, although they're uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Grandpa visits his police friend in charge of Mai's case. Although it's illegal to share the case, his friend gives the file as Grandpa was a former lieutenant general. The car that crashed into Mai was registered under a real estate tycoon, but it was driven by Tycoon's son and friends. Tycoon's son and his girlfriend testified that their friend was the driver, but Grandpa thinks they paid the friend to take the fall. This fuels his anger and hunger to find the person responsible for putting Mai in a coma and for her kids being possible orphans. Meanwhile, while the siblings talk about Fame, they accidentally find Fame's phone on the couch. Pim attempts to check if her clip is still there, but they hear the noises coming from the hole before she can do so. The two walk toward it, and Putt shares that he saw the house next door and the creepy girl when he peeked. Pim instructs him to look out for their grandparents while she looks into the hole. She watches as the creepy girl crawls out from the room and drags herself toward the door, blood coming out from her mouth, staining her white dress and the floor. Pim panics after seeing that and tells Putt that they need to help the girl. Confused, Putt peeks and curses as he finds the creepy girl up close, revealing a huge hole on her forehead. Pim repeatedly tells her brother that they need to help her, but Putt tells her they can't because she's a ghost. Pim peeks again like a peeping Tom, only to find the little girl humming a lullaby to a baby. However, she begins choking and then suddenly vomits blood. Pim gasps in shock and tells Putt to stay away from the hole. She shares that it's nighttime in that house. Later that night, the same noise disturbs Putt's sleep. He hides underneath the blanket, but then finds the little girl humming to Pim while caressing her hair. The girl suddenly looks at him, causing him to fall over the bed from fear. He gets up, but finds the girl in front of him, causing him to let out a loud scream. The girl vanishes as Pim turns on the lampshade. Putt frantically tells Pim that the girl had been in their room. As they argue about whether it is true, the girl stands outside their room, listening to them. The following day, Pim removes Putt's blanket so they can go to school, but instead, she finds bloodstains on his shirt. This worries Pim, so she quickly calls Grandma. Meanwhile, Grandpa cries in frustration at the news that Tycoon's son walks free after his friend admitted to the hit and run. He swears to his still unconscious daughter that the person responsible will be held accountable, no matter what. On the other hand, Grandma shares with Putt that their mother was the perfect girl, just like Pim. They had such high expectations from her until something happened. But then she changes the subject and takes an interest in Putt's artistic ability. However, she finds a sketch of the creepy girl with a hole on her forehead. Putt quickly explains that he didn't sketch it when Grandma's dementia suddenly attacks again. She demands Putt to drink the milk, which he reluctantly does. After that, she leaves, so Putt checks the sketch, but it has mysteriously disappeared and he accidentally knocks off the jug of milk. Later that day, Putt shares to Pim that the hole kept calling out to him, so he took a look. After that, he begins coughing blood, concerning Pim even more, so she quickly calls Grandpa and informs him. At that time, Grandpa is monitoring Tycoon's son at a party, but he has no choice but to come home as Grandma is still asleep. While waiting for Grandpa, Pim peeks through the hole and witnesses the girl crawling her way to the front door, but she vomits too much blood. Pim quickly informs her brother that the drunken man on the couch let the girl die in the house. Putt looks and finds it, but they're confused about how she died. Just then, a realization hits Putt. The room they see through the hole looks precisely like their living room. They realize how Grandma keeps glancing at the empty wall because it's an old habit of hers to check the time. Putt explains that they're experiencing a wormhole, a portal that connects different dimensions. The hole is the portal that connects the past and the present of the house. Their analysis gets interrupted when Grandpa arrives, but the siblings reluctantly confess everything they saw and realized through the hole. Fed up, Grandpa pushes the cabinet to block the hole and stops them from constantly talking about it. After that, he orders them to go back to sleep while he loads his pistol and takes things into his hands. However, the cabinet drops to the ground, waking the siblings and Grandma up. Meanwhile, Tycoon's son is on his way home when he almost crashes into the grandpa. He arrogantly flexes his father's connection, but he cannot scare the grandpa. So he takes his gun from the glove compartment, but he smashes his head on the wheel before he can pull the trigger. After that, the grandpa beats him up, pours the whiskey, and burns him alive. Simultaneously, Mai finally wakes up and her doctor tells her that her kids are staying with their grandparents. This prompts her to tell them that she needs to get her kids out of the house, but they won't let her go. Meanwhile, while cleaning up the broken plates, the siblings hear the noises again, but now it's different. Grandma can also see the hole and hear the noises. She confesses that the noise has been tormenting her for 15 years, but she kept silent because Grandpa didn't believe her. He made her take those pills to forget everything, but she never looked through the hole. Pim peeks through it, despite Grandma's warning, and she finally finds the context. She finds her mother holding a baby, looking for her eldest daughter, Pina, while her drunk husband sleeps on the couch. The grandparents arrive, so Mai tells them that Pina's missing. Pim backs up and tells them what she saw, proving Putt's theory that the hole is the portal to the past. Putt peeks through and finds Grandpa carrying an unconscious Pina, while Mai cries as she panics. Mai blames her husband for letting their daughter die. Grandma grabs Putt and tells him that he doesn't need to know what happened to his father. Suddenly, they hear a gunshot. Meanwhile, Grandpa comes to the hospital, only to discover that his daughter has run away. Simultaneously, Grandma shares that they went out with the mother 15 years ago, leaving Pina to the father. A flashback plays, revealing Pina and her father are playing hide and seek. Pina hides in the room under the staircase, and the father forgets about her as he's busy drinking. They find her dead due to drinking rat poison hours later, because Pina wasn't a normal kid. Because of this, the father takes Grandpa's gun and kills himself, guilty after Pina's death, but suddenly vomits blood. So Pim wants to take him to the hospital, but Grandma disagrees. She forces Putt to drink the milk, thinking he's Pina, but before she can do so, Mai stops her. She and Pim help Putt walk toward the door, but Grandpa stops them before they can leave. Mai confronts him on whether her husband really took his gun and killed himself. The siblings tell her that they know about their father and Pina. Putt coughs up blood again, so Pim informs Mai that he's been sick for days, and Grandma only forces him to drink milk instead of going to the hospital. A realization suddenly hits Pim, so she prepares to drink the milk, despite Grandma's protest. But an unseen force suddenly grabs it and smashes it into the hole. A flashback reveals that Grandma never favors Pina because of the disfiguration on her face. She always scolds her and forces her to drink milk. This prompts Mai to realize that Grandma poisoned Pina and Putt. Grandma pretended to be innocent and kept silent as they held their son-in-law responsible for Pina's death. She finally confesses that she poisoned Putt because he was born like Pina, ugly, and crippled. She did all that because her perfect daughter married a drunkard and even gave birth to a disfigured Pina. She was obsessed with the idea of perfection that she didn't care about destroying everything. Mai calms herself and tells them that she will not expose their crimes only if they leave her family alone. After that, she returns to their house with her kids, leaving her old mother devastated. The following day, Mai apologizes for keeping the truth from her kids. Putt is just like his father. They're both artists, and his father focused his problems on making art and drinking. Pina loved Pim so much that she would hum a lullaby until she fell asleep. The siblings share that they discover a fraction of the whole truth after looking through the hole. Mai shares that Grandpa tried to cover the hole after their father killed himself, but it never disappeared. Later that night, Grandma panics after hearing the noise she endured for 15 years. Grandpa attempts to go after her, but he answers a phone call first. It's his police friend who asks him to come over for an interview regarding Tycoon's son's death. Also, a new witness is turned up, and they have new images from a dashboard camera, revealing that Tycoon's son was indeed not the person responsible for his daughter's hospitalization. His friend was the driver. Meanwhile, Grandma opens the closet underneath the staircase, revealing Pina's ghost inside. She walks toward Grandma with open arms, wanting to be held, but Grandma shoves her away. Pina suddenly vomits blood on her, causing Grandpa to go downstairs after hearing Grandma's screams. He finds her convulsing after taking the rat poison, and her body suddenly contorts, transforming into his son-in-law. Grandpa repeatedly shoots him, but what he saw is an apparition, and he accidentally kills his wife. Overwhelmed with guilt, Grandpa puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger. A flashback plays, revealing the whole truth. Grandma locks the closet door, unaware that Pina's there, and Mai actually pulled the gun on her husband, blaming him for Pina's death. Mai quickly returns to her senses after seeing her husband's body, and Grandpa immediately makes it look like her husband killed himself. The film ends with Mai smiling creepily to herself in the mirror as she puts on her bright red lipstick, thinking that no one will know the whole truth aside from her. Meanwhile, Pim smiles as she sleeps after hearing Pina humming the lullaby to her. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.